Hello, welcome to Things We Don't Talk About, a podcast about hidden truths, lawful living, and reclaiming your understanding of how the world really works. I'm your host, Stephanie Webb,
And my name is Mark Daniel Lomasney.
and in this very first episode, we're doing something that almost no one does anymore. We're reading the United States Constitution, not summarizing it, not quoting it, we're reading it out loud. Because how can you claim to know your rights if we've never studied the documents that they come from? Let's begin. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common def- defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
Article 1, Section 1, Congress. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. Section 2, the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of the several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. No person shall be a representative who shall have attained the age, who has not attained the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of the state in which they are chosen. So basically what that means is if you want to serve in Congress, you have to be at least 25 years old and you have to be a resident or citizen of that state for at least 7 years. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within this union according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole numbers of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed 3/5 of all other persons. So it's interesting there they included this section, 3/5 of all other persons, because what we commonly refer to as slavery was actually the 3/5 clause. So that's what they're referring to in that section.
Absolutely.
The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of Congress of the United States, and within every subsequent term of 10 years, in such manner as they shall be law directed. The number of representatives shall not exceed one for every 30,000, but each state shall have at least one representative. And until such enumeration shall be made, the state of New Hampshire shall be entitled to choose 3, Massachusetts 8, Rhode Island and Providence plantations 1, Connecticut 5, New York 6, New Jersey 4, Pennsylvania 8, Delaware 1, Maryland 6, Virginia 10, North Carolina 5, South Carolina 5, and Georgia 3. So all those numbers that I just read off were the initial amount of state representatives prior to having actual census or understanding of like how many people there were going to be in each specific state. When vacancies happen in the representation from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. The House of Representatives shall choose their speaker and their officers and shall have the sole power of impeachment. Section 3 is the Senate. The Senate of the United States shall be comprised of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislature thereof, for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. Immediately after they shall be assembled in consequence of their first election, they shall be divided as equally as may be into 3 classes. The seats of the Senate of the first class shall be vacated at the expiration of the 2nd year, and the second class of expiration of the 4th year. So this is kind of where that 50% always comes in. So we have the general election, and then we have the other elections. And in the other, every 2 years, we're basically filling half the Senate and half the House. And this is where that's decided, is right here. And if vacancies happen by resignation or otherwise during the recess of the legislature in any state, the executive thereof may make a temporary appointment until the next meeting of the legislature, which shall then fill such vacancies. So basically what that's saying is the legislature has the ability to appoint someone to the Senate on an intermediate basis up until the point that that vacancy can be filled. No person shall be a senator who shall not have attained the age of 30 years and been 9 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of the state for which he shall be chosen. The Vice President of the United States shall be the President of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless they be equally divided. The Senate shall choose their other officers and also a President pro tempore in the absence of the Vice President or when he exercises the office of the President of the United States. The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside, and no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. So this is kind of interesting because when you look at, say, Donald Trump is twice impeached, but he went through his trials and he was not more or less convicted by 2/3 of the senators. So that is why, even though he was twice impeached, he was tried, and you didn't have 66 out of 100. Thus, he is still the president. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit on the United States. But the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable or subject to indictment, trial, judgment, or punishment according to the law. Section 4, elections. The time, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations, except to the places of choosing senators. The Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, and such meeting shall be on the first Monday in December, unless they shall by law appoint a different day. Section 5, powers and duties of Congress. Each house shall be a judge of the elections, returns and qualifications of its own members, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business. But a smaller number may adjourn from day to day and be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members, in such manner and under such penalties as the House may provide. Each House may determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and in concurrence with 2/3 expel a member. So this happens from time to time. You'll have different people sitting on this subcommittee or that subcommittee. We've got the Defense Department, all these different things. And we hear this every once in a while where someone is being like put in timeout. That is where this comes in. So basically, if a member of Congress is not upholding his or her duty, then it is the duty of the other members of Congress to sanction them, or in this instance, punish them for their disorderly behavior.
Yeah, you have to show up.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't just go months and months and just miss meetings, and otherwise, why are you in office?
Absolutely. Or if somebody holds a specific position and that specific position has a set of duties, and that person is not upholding their duties, they're going to be found under this section. Each House shall keep a journal of its proceedings, and from time to time publish the same, expecting such parts as may in their judgment require secrecy, and the yeas and the nays of the members of either House on any question shall, at the desire of 1/5 of those present, be entered on the journal. Neither House during that session of Congress shall, without the consent of another, adjourn for more than 3 days, nor to any other place than in which the two houses shall be sitting. Section 6, rights and disabilities of the members. The senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services to be ascertained by law and paid out of the Treasury in the United States. So no different than you and I want to get paid when we go to work. All of our representatives and senators want to get paid when they go to work. They shall, in all cases, except treason, felony, and breach of peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respected houses, and in going to or returning from the same place, and for any speech or debate in the House, they shall not be questioned in any other place. And that makes a lot of sense. That has to do with government operations. So we can't have congressmen and senators being questioned or arrested while they're trying to do stuff because they're trying to run the government. So that's their job. No senator or representative shall, during the time for which he was elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall have been created, or emoluments whereof shall be increased during such time. And no person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during the continuation of office. So what this really means is there's no such thing as double dipping. So if that person holds a public position, then they can't be doing stuff civilly, which would be private. And then you also can't be a congressman and a senator at the same time. Section 7, legislative process. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. Every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate before it becomes a law be presented to the President of the United States. If he approves, he shall sign it, but if he shall not, return it, with the objections to the House in which it shall have originated, who shall enter the objections at large on their journal and proceed to reconsider it. If after such reconsiderations 2/3 of the House shall agree to pass the bill, it shall be sent together with the objections to the other House, by which it shall likewise be reconsidered, and if approved by 2/3 of that House, it shall become law. But in all such cases, the votes of both houses shall be determined by yeas and nays, and the names of the persons voting for and against the bill shall be entered into the journal of each house respectively. So what that means is there is a documentation process. So we have X amount of senators, we have X amount of Congress people. Their votes, whether it's a yay or a nay, will be tallied, and there is a way of looking up and having a record of which congressperson voted yay or which congressperson voted nay. If any bill shall not be returned to the president within 10 days, Sundays exempted, after it shall be presented to him, the same shall be in law. In like manner, as if he signed it, unless the Congress by their adjournment prevents its return, in which case it shall not be law. Every order, resolution, or vote to which the concurrence of the Senate and the House of Representatives may be necessary, except on a question of adjournment, shall be presented to the President of the United States, and before the same shall take effect, shall be approved by him, or being disproved by him, shall be repassed by 2/3 of the Senate of the House of Representatives according to the rules and limits and limitations prescribed in the case of a bill. So now we're into section 8, powers of Congress. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties imposed and exercises, to pay the debts provided for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties imposed and exercises shall be uniform throughout the United States. To borrow money on the credit of the United States, to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and the Indian tribes, to establish a uniform rule of naturalization and uniform laws on the subjects of bankruptcies throughout the United States. It's very important to look at uniform, because what they're saying here is that it doesn't matter if I'm in California or if I'm in Rhode Island or if I'm in Virginia, it's a uniform rule across the board for things like this, bankruptcy specifically. So Congress is also to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and foreign coin, and to fix the standard of weights and measures. To provide for the punishment of counterfeiting the securities and current coin of the United States. To establish post offices and post roads. To promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and investors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. To constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court, to define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offices against the law of nations, to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and to make rules concerning captures on land and water. In later episodes, we will go into some of these things in more detail, especially to grant letters of marque and reprisal.
Absolutely.
That is one thing we're not going to cover too much right now, but we'll get into that on later episodes.
It's a big one, that's for sure. So we might as well break it down for you guys later on.
Mm-hmm. To raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years. So what that's really saying right here there is that they only have 2 years. We all know Congress serves a 2-year term. To provide and maintain a navy, to make rules for the government and regulations in the land and naval forces, to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the nation, suppress insurrections and repel invasions, to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for the government such part of them as may be employed in the services of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training militia according to the discipline provided by Congress, to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 square miles, as may be session of the particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all such places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erecting of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and all other needing buildings. The beauty of this section right here is that we had to establish you had the authority to do this, because you have to kind of transport yourself back to 1789, 1776, and basically we didn't have the infrastructure that we had in place.
Exactly.
So it's very important to think like, I'm just now building a society. Who's going to have the say over what things are done at what time? And if you don't establish that, how do you have law and order?
Absolutely. I mean, they still had brick roads back then.
Yeah. So hey, we got to solve these problems, and this is how we're going to do it. To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution of foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in the department or officer thereof. So Section 9 is powers that are denied to Congress. The migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by Congress prior to the year 1808. But a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation not exceeding $10 per person. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion, public safety may require it. You can see a lot of Latin. English is a Latin-based language. Habeas corpus is a very important thing, and we will cover that in more detail on another episode. No bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. Something else we're going to look into. No capitalization or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein before directed to be taken. No tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from the state. No preference shall be given by any regulation or of commerce or revenue to the ports of one state over those of another, nor shall vessels be bound to or form one state be obligated to enter, clear, or pay duties to another. So what that's really saying here is we have to also think about that, at the time of the original 13 colonies, every state was a border state, more or less, pretty much except for like New Hampshire. So you have to think about it. You can't mandate that a ship land in Rhode Island and not North Carolina, and then demand that those items that landed at, say, North Carolina or Rhode Island has to go to the other one. No money shall be drawn from the treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law and a regular statement and account of those receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States. So what that really means is that at the end of the day, the United States cannot dub somebody a duke. You cannot dub somebody the queen.
So a lot of people, you'll see Esquire at the end of their name. There's a couple movies, with lawyers in it, and Esquires at the end of their name. Like, that is a title of nobility. And especially if you're like in court, the nobility just doesn't really stand up the same way as it does outside of the United States.
Absolutely. And no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept of any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatsoever from any king, prince, or foreign state. And that really just has to deal with the fact that that can be looked at as like a bribe of some kind. If a person is holding public office, they really probably shouldn't be accepting gifts. I understand that that does happen from time to time, but it does create an issue no matter what. Doesn't matter if the gift is small. And I understand that pretty recently President Trump accepted a very large airplane. So, what are you going to do? Section 10, powers denied to the state. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold or silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or a law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any titles of nobility. So basically what that's saying is like when you are a state, so we're going to take the state of Michigan as an example. So I cannot, as the state of Michigan, create my own currency. I have to use the currency of the land. I also cannot say because I'm in the state of Michigan, or say the governor of Michigan, I cannot knight somebody or create that title of nobility. So there are limits to what the states can do. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any imposts or duties on imports or exports, except what may be absolutely necessary for executing its inspection laws. And the net produce of all duties and imposts laid by any state on imports or exports shall be for the use of the Treasury of the United States, and all such laws shall be subject to the revision and control of Congress. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state, or with a foreign power, or engage in war, unless actually invaded, or in such imminent danger, it will have no delay. So again, the state of Indiana cannot invade the state of Ohio because Indiana beat Ohio, or Ohio State beat Indiana in a football game. Like you can't just do that.
Right. That's why with the riots in LA right now, they're sending, the military, the reserves, and
it would be actually incredibly appropriate. They're sending the Marines. But even if you thought about it like this, like let's say the police force in San Diego wanted to come up to Los Angeles, we couldn't do that either. That's
the jurisdiction.
Not exactly.
Yeah, everything is a jurisdictional issue
100%.
at the end of the day.
100%.
All right. So Article 2, Section 1. These are all going to be the powers of the president. So the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the vice president chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors, equal to the number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator or representative or person holding office, trust, or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. So essentially it's saying that if you're a senator and a representative, you can't be an elector of.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the entire purpose of this is the separation of powers, and that's what we're going through. So we all know the basics in a nutshell of the separation of powers, but this literally goes into breaking down how everybody has their own role, and the president is obviously much different than any senator or representative.
Because the president, if you break down how the word comes together, president, he presides over you and your estate. So who you are, what your name is, and then, everything that is attached to your estate, which is huge. The electors shall meet in the representative states and vote by ballot for 2 persons, of whom one at least shall not be an inhabitant of same state with themselves. And they shall make a list of all the persons voted for, and of the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify, and transmit sealed to the seat of the government of the United States, directed to the President of the Senate. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives, open all the certificates and the votes shall be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes shall be the president. If such number of a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if there be more than one who have such majority and have an equal number of votes, then the House of Representatives shall immediately choose by ballot one of them for president. And if no person have a majority, then from the 5 highest on the list, the said House shall in the manner choose the president. But in choosing the president, the votes shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having 1 vote. A quorum for this purpose shall consist of a member or members from 2/3 of the state, and a majority of all states shall be necessary to a choice. In every case, after the choice of the president, the person having the greatest number of votes of the electors shall be vice president. But if there should remain 2 or more who have equal votes, the Senate shall choose from them by ballot the vice president. The Congress may determine the time of choosing the electors and the day on which they shall give their votes, which day shall be the same throughout the United States, which means that one state doesn't get a leg up or gets to vote one day before another state. It's all going to be the same, so everyone can do it fairly.
And that's why they call it election day.
Absolutely.
Or they used to, at least.
No person except a natural born citizen or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of the Constitution shall be eligible to the office of the president. Neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not be attained to the age of 35 years and been 14 years a resident within the United States.
So basically what this is saying here is that there are rules to being the president of the United States. Number 1, you must be at least 35 years or older. Heck, I'd like to see somebody a lot younger in that position than the past ones we've had recently. The other thing too is that you must be born in this country. So if you were born in Hungary, sorry, you cannot be the president of the United States. Sorry, that's the rule.
In case of the removal of the president from office or of his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of the said office, the same shall devolve on the vice president, and Congress may by law provide for the case of removal, death, resignation, or inability, both by the president and vice president, declaring what officer shall then act as president, and such officer shall act accordingly until disability be removed or president shall be elected. So this is where, like, say like 9/11 came on and the president had to be separated from the vice president.
Mm-hmm.
And then the vice president, there's a whole chain. So like the vice president can't be next to the next person on the chain. Like they all have to be separate in case.
Speaker of the House is third in line.
So there you go. So yeah, if the president dies, the vice president dies, then we go on to the Speaker of the House and so on and so forth. The president shall at stated times receive for his services a compensation which shall neither be increased nor diminished during the period for which he shall have been elected, and he shall not receive within that period any other emolument from the United States or any of them.
So what this is really saying here is that just like with Congress and the Senate, the president should get paid for his or her time as president. However, they are not allowed to draw additional salaries or income from the United States or any individual state. So this is where, like, as we all know, the president cannot own a business while he or she is serving as the president. This happened once. This was an issue when Jimmy Carter was in office, and this has come up during Donald Trump's time as president as well.
And also Bush, like the vice president.
Yeah. It's a simple conflict of interest. It's like if I'm running,
what's the best? What's you really at your best interest at heart?
Yeah, exactly. If I'm a business owner and say I own a trucking company, I might have the idea to try to help my business out, not so much the United States. My duty as the president is to the people. It's not to my business.
Right. Kind of like the old Postmaster General DeJoy owning his own trucking company. That kind of thing. You know, he really profited off of that. And that's why they stopped sending everything over air and they trucked everything, is because DeJoy had his own trucking company. So moving on, before he enter on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So the oath of office, those are actually put on record, and if somebody is holding office and they don't have an oath of office on record, they can actually get in pretty big trouble. So Section 2, the President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states. When called into actual service of the United States, he may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of the respective offices. And he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment.
I didn't even know that. I didn't know there were limits on pardons. That's really cool.
That's great. Yeah, because if you did something so bad that you're being impeached, you probably deserve it.
Yeah, we don't want you pardoned.
Yeah. You're not holding up your oath of office, then see you later. He shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provide 2/3 of the senators present concur, and he shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and councils, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States, whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law by the Congress, may be best the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper in the president alone, in the courts of law, or the heads of departments. The president shall have power to fill up all vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting commissions which shall expire at the end of their next session. So a lot of this is like what?
It all happens right after elections. Yeah, it's
like
cabinet members. Exactly. It's not just say like, you've got the Secretary of State, you've got Chief of Staff. It doesn't even necessarily mean
the Attorney General. There's so many.
Exactly. So once a president wins the election, it is his or her job to fill these positions. And typically those positions are not brought over from the previous administration. So in a nutshell, every 4 to 8 years, we have a constant recycle of new people in the same positions. They're just appointed. Then there are certain positions where the Senate actually has to approve them. And if they're not approved, then they don't get to hold the position.
Yeah.
It's the same checks and balances that we're also happy that we have here in America.
Absolutely. So Section 3, he shall from time to time give to the Congress informed of the state of the Union. State of the Union addresses.
Mm-hmm.
That used to happen every Saturday or every other Saturday, right?
Yeah. Now it's like once a year.
Yeah. and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. He may, on extraordinary occasions, convene both houses or either of them, and in case of disagreement between them with respect to the time of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such time as he shall think proper. He shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed and shall commission all the officers of the United States.
So this is a very interesting part too, because if you look at it, it's actually the duty of the United States president. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. What that means, it is officially the duty of the president and the vice president and everybody else in that cabinet to uphold the laws. They have to. So it's not up for debate when presidents choose to not uphold the law. That's a big deal.
But we'll get into this in
Later episodes.
Article 6, I believe, the supremacy clause, where it doesn't really matter what law is on the books. The Constitution is the law of the land. So ultimately, if they're not upholding the Constitution first, then again, it's a really big deal. So codes and statutes, that's not all that there is. There's lots of law out there, law standing for land, air, and water. That's a fun subject, and we'll get into that later. Section 4, the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for a conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors.
And that's very important too, to look at this. That it's like, hey guys, the purpose of an impeachment is for something that is serious. I think it's important to understand that the purpose of the Constitution is not to pick sides. The Constitution is not Republican or Democrat. It's not a Green Party. It's not libertarian. It's not any of those things. But it is important to look at all things and understanding it's like, is this something that we should bring impeachment for? And if so, we can also do that for misdemeanors.
So based on bias and what party is actually in office, lately in the past few years, that has been subjective.
Yes.
Very much so. Even if you just I don't want to get into this too much, but going back to the Twitter files, going back to the bribes, fighting God, and all of those things. I mean, that was very subjective when he was put up for impeachment.
Yes.
So then Article 3, Section 1, the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in, Mark is going to take over Article 3, I mean.
Thank you. Thank you very much for starting. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts. And the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish the judges both of the Supreme and inferior courts shall hold their offices during good behavior and shall at stated times receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuation of office. In a nutshell, guys, it's every contract and things. Like, you're not going to adjust, their compensation because they're doing a good job or a bad job. They get that while they're in office. So Section 2, the judicial powers extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made, or which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, to controversies to which the United States shall be party, to controversies between two or more states, between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming land under grants of different states, and between state or citizen thereof and foreign states, citizens or subjects. So again, guys, at the dawn of our time, we had to establish things like this. So basically, this is a checks and balances system to say, hey, if we have disagreements, this is how we're going to go ahead and handle this. Judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity as covering a variety of circumstances in which there could be a law or equitable situation that needs to be covered. It's written vaguely for a reason.
But to go over it a little bit more, also, it is, I love I love the last little bit where it says citizens or subjects. We're going to go over that over the next episode, but that's huge phrasing. And then also the equity or law. So there's more than just codes and statutes, you guys. There's absolutely equity. And judicial power, judicial courts are not the same as executive courts.
Mhm.
And it's a huge difference, and you can't get them mixed up because you can't take equity to an executive court and have it be taken seriously. So executive courts give out executive powers. So you got to keep that in mind.
Absolutely. In all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers and councils, and those whose state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. Everything is jurisdiction, everything. In all other cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and fact, with such exceptions and under such regulation as the Congress shall make. The trial of crimes, except in cases of impeachment, shall be by jury, and such trials shall be held in the state where said crimes shall have been committed. But when not committed within any state, the trial shall be a place or places as Congress may by law have directed. So this is a very interesting part too, because it shall be by jury. I don't know if you guys are familiar with our criminal justice system in the 21st century. Almost no cases go to a jury trial. Less than 1% of all cases go to a jury trial.
And juries are by peers.
Yeah.
So that's also something that is overlooked quite often because they just assume, because most of law and lawyers just operate off of assumptions. So they assume that, you're in their jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you're not a U.S. citizen. Sometimes you're a subject. You're a national. You're something else, right? Or you're an officer, not like you can't take offenses to Congress in the District of Columbia.
Right. It's like, would you think? So I know that the Cherokee Indians are a tribe. Would their chief fall under the jurisdiction of the United States? The simple answer is no. No, they don't.
Right. They have their own judicial process. Yep.
So it's a little bit different. Section 3, treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless at the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act or a confession in open court. The Congress shall have the power to declare the punishment of treason, but no teacher of treason shall work corruption of blood or forfeiture except during the life of the person attainted. So again, my understanding to the 18th century is that this was extremely common to throw treasonous accusations around. And it's one of the worst crimes you could ever have. It's instantaneous death. You're going to lose all your possessions. Your family's going to be scorned and shamed. So this had to be put in there to try to prevent such egregious accusations from being thrown around so well. But hey, it still happens. Treason still exists in the real world. So you still have to be able to look at it from the standpoint of, hey, we need to be able to regulate this, but we still need to be able to enforce it if it does come up. All right, Article 4.
Section 1, full faith and credit shall be given in each state to the public. Acts, records, and judicial processings of every other state. And the Congress may be general laws prescribed the manner in which such acts, records, and proceedings shall be proved and the effect thereof. So I want to just pause here for a second. So Mark read earlier, he said that everything was supposed to be gold and silver. It says it right in the Constitution. And, in 1933, they came in and they were like, we need to change the system. It's not working. So now we have what's called fiat currency. It's a currency. It's not money. It doesn't pay for things. It's a debt, paying another debt. So it's compounding debts. And you wonder why we're trillions of dollars in debt. It's because, we're paying debts with debts. And so now everything, literally everything, securities, all of that, every single loan, which is a security, cash is security, which is why I mean, we can go down a long road of how that leads you to other acts and other things, but everything is nowadays backed by full faith and credit, purely full faith and credit.
Absolutely.
So, like your labor is like the UCC, like of your labor, like the first claim of your labor. So that's how everything ends up being backed by your full faith and credit. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. A person charged in any state with treason, felony, or other crime who shall flee from justice and be found in another state shall, on demand of the executive authority of the state from which he fled, be delivered up to be removed to the state and jurisdiction of the crime. Extradition, like extraditing other people to getting them back to the state with the jurisdiction. Everyone's heard of this. No person held to service or labor in one state under the laws thereof, escaping into another, shall, in consequence of any law or regulation therein, be discharged from such service or labor, but shall be delivered up on claim of the party to whom such service or labor may be due. So, going to jail, that claim delivered on the claim, so they're taking your body as collateral, and that's how they're paying. That's what's backing whatever you did wrong. So whatever landed you in jail, that's what they're doing. They're just taking your body as collateral. So Section 3, new states may be admitted by the Congress into this union, but no new state shall be formed or erected within the jurisdiction of any other state, nor any state be formed by the junction of two or more states or parts of states without the consent of the legislatures of the state concerned, as well of the Congress. The Congress shall have power to dispose and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States, and nothing in this Constitution shall be so construed as to prejudice any claims of the United States of any particular state.
So you have to think about Section 3 there is that every nation believes that they're going to grow. So what they're really saying here is that, hey guys, we know we're young and everything, but we expect this nation to grow. The thing is that you can't take land out of Montana and give it to North Dakota or vice versa.
So when I lived in Oregon, the west side of Oregon and the east side of the Oregon, they didn't want to be next to each other. They wanted to be separate states. The east side with the west side should be Oregon, and then the east side of Oregon really just wants to be part of Idaho. And the people in Oregon, especially the east side of Oregon, they would just go on and on about how their state wouldn't, allow them to be a part of Idaho and how it was such a big thing. Well, it really comes down to Section 3. Having to vote on it, having,
it's fine to have disagreements in a nutshell. Yeah, it's like you can have a disagreement and we can say that this county is a little more liberal, this county is a little bit more conservative, all of those things. That's great. That's all wonderful information. But if you're going to, like, you can't just break up a state because there's a difference of opinion.
Yeah.
There has to be more to it than, oh, I'm sorry that we disagree.
Yeah.
That's great. You disagree and everything, but you can't just run away and take half of Oregon with you.
All right, Section 4. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government, and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence.
Right, moving on to Article 5. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislature of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution. When ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions in the 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress, provided that no amendment which may be made prior to the year 1808 shall be in matter of fact the first and fourth clauses in the 9th section of the first article, and that no state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. So, equal suffrage in the Senate, that means having the right to vote in the Senate. I find it interesting that they keep referencing the year 1808. This Constitution was ratified in 1789, and they specifically have brought up 1808 multiple times.
Yeah.
So they were clearly looking forward. Something must have happened in 1808. You might have to look into that. See what it was. All right, now we're going to move on to Article 6.
All debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. So the supremacy clause. And the judges of every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or the laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding.
So what that means in a nutshell is the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Now, the Constitution has referenced developing a navy. It has referenced maritime admiralty jurisdiction, but this is the end all be all of the conversation. At the end of the day, this is the law of the land. Any other, that's what this means, anything in the Constitution or laws of an state to the contrary notwithstanding. That means the Constitution supersedes anything that is contrary to it. End of discussion.
I feel like this is the most frustrating article of them all. Specifically under where it's talking about the judges need to uphold the Constitution as well, because when you go into an executive court and you quote them the Constitution saying these are my rights, this is where your power stops, and then they laugh at you, that's very, 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 very frustrating. And you're like, but why? And then you don't understand that you're not in the right jurisdiction to even quote the Constitution. And that is something that nobody talks about, and that's absolutely going to be on our podcast, because judges shouldn't be laughing at you when you go, hey, that's against the Constitution. What are you doing, guy? And he laughs at you, and he's like, I'm going to put you in contempt,
Something to that nature. And another thing we're going to go over in future episodes is individual state constitutions. To my understanding, is every single state constitution references back to the federal constitution and then gives up their state sovereignty to the federal constitution. Because we always hear about the confliction of state versus federal laws or state versus federal jurisdiction. No matter how badly the state of Louisiana wants to be sovereign, when they joined the Union, they gave up their sovereignty to the federal government, thus making the federal constitution the supreme authority. And thus, then, all of their subsequent stuff does not supersede this constitution. Now, they can have laws to govern Louisiana. You can have laws to govern Massachusetts, and these laws are just as important as anything else. We're talking about specifically when you have contradictions, when you have conflicts. We must be referring back to this document and accepting it as factual. Otherwise, what those people are saying is they are sovereign and they do not have to abide by the rules and the laws that they have sworn their duty to uphold.
Yeah. Are you on the state? Like, are you on we're on Michigan, or are you like a citizen of District of Columbia? Those are two different
things.
And it really depends on going back to jurisdiction. So Article 7.
Oh, there's one more section that the senators and representatives aforementioned and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath of affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States.
So we have the freedom of religion.
Absolutely. And then secondly, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. So that means any person that holds any position anywhere, your mayor, your city clerk, your parking attendant, all of them are taking an oath of office, or supposed to be taking an oath of office to this Constitution.
Which is, going back to making sure that their oath of office is actually on record. So if they're not on record, you can point that out, and you can actually get them in quite a bit of trouble for that.
The simple way of looking at this is that, like, when a public servant is entering, that they're giving up their time, energy, and effort to be a public servant. That means there is a steps, there are processes, and you are taking an oath of office. For those of you who are not familiar with, like, First Amendment auditors, stuff like that, this is something you hear a lot. So honor your oath to the Constitution. That is directly what that section is talking about. And if that individual, a police officer, mayor, city clerk, anybody who holds a public position, if they don't have an oath of office, they don't actually have the authority that they think they do. End of discussion.
Absolutely. So, Article 7, the ratification of the conventions of 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states so ratifying the same.
So in a nutshell, what that means is that when the original Constitution, the 1789 Constitution, was out, it did not take all 13 colonies to ratify it. So there you go. All right, now we're going to get into the First Amendment, and then what we commonly know as the first 10 amendments are the Bill of Rights. So the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government to redress grievances. Abridging is a word you're going to see a few times throughout the Constitution. We're not going to pull up the definition of it on this, but I strongly suggest looking up what it means. In a nutshell, what it means is don't tread on me.
Yeah. Great. The Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And that doesn't include, like, hey, yeah, you can bear arms, but only if you have a permit. It says shall not be infringed. So you walking around with, openly carrying or, exposing a gun, that shouldn't actually incite police officers coming up to essentially harass you about why you're carrying a gun. Why do you need it? Well,
right.
It's my right, you know?
And I think beyond that too is it's like, so whenever you hear a police officer say, can I see your permit or your registration for the firearm? Permit means permission, and registration means giving up ownership. So why would a public official ask me to show them that I have permission from them to exercise the right that's given to me from the United States Constitution?
By God, really?
Exactly. So like this doesn't actually make sense.
Yeah.
When people say, "Oh, I have my gun permit," why? Why do you need a permit to exercise a right?
Right. Why did you ask for permission?
That doesn't actually make sense. The Third Amendment: no soldier in the time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in manner to be prescribed by law. So this is not very common in the 21st century in America, but back in the 18th century, this happened all the time. The British would literally just walk people up to people's front doors and say, "You are going to house these soldiers." And people didn't have a choice. If they argued about it, they were typically, they would lose their possessions, they would be injured, or worse than that. So basically what this is saying is that, hey, if you want to be invited over to my house, like that's fine, but I don't have to have you over there.
So this is pretty controversial. In my opinion, this happened when Biden opened the borders and states were offering money to house these illegal immigrants that were coming in. In my opinion, this was a lot bigger, and to me, this fell under the Third Amendment of asking us to house
People from other countries.
illegal immigrants that they had bigger plans for, because they were making them social security cards or making them IDs for the United States, and everybody knows that those aren't securities. So they were making money off these illegals and then asking us to house them, which is a huge Third Amendment issue.
It certainly is. Fourth Amendment.
The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause. That's a very key phrase right there. Supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So this is when cops come in and you're like,
show me the warrant.
no, I won't just open my car. I know I'm not going to open my glove box. It's locked. My trunk is locked also. So what is your probable cause? What is your articulable suspicion that I committed a crime? And if they can't come up with one, well, then they can't just do whatever they want.
There's something else that goes along with that. It's called an affidavit of support. So in order for a warrant to be issued, there's something called an affidavit of support. That's what they also mean by oath or affirmation in this instance, is that but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation. So I'm going to play that I'm a detective, and I witnessed somebody steal a car. So I need to go in front of a magistrate and tell them what I saw, and then sign in the presence of a notary that I have witnessed these crimes and put that down there. If those things don't exist, you don't actually have that. You don't have the oath of affirmation, which means you can't have a warrant. And if you don't have a warrant, now what is the probable cause that I need to be arrested in the first place?
Right.
This does not happen day to day, everybody. Like, this doesn't happen at all. When
a warrant just means a written order for arrest.
Right.
Essentially.
So when you have a person who's, say, traveling down the road and their tail light is broken and the police officer pulls them over and then arrests them because they don't like their attitude, this is a massive issue. This isn't a little issue, it's a massive issue. And shouldn't be allowing this. We shouldn't be normalizing it. And I wonder why we do. And I wonder why we are.
Compliance and assumption. It rules the world. It really does.
Yeah. So now we'll move on to the Fifth Amendment. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury. This kind of goes back, we were talking a little bit earlier about how most cases never see a retrial in the first place. Well, this is now talking about indictment of grand jury. Except in cases arriving in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or in public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice in jeopardy of life or limb. This is where the double jeopardy clause comes from. Nor shall be compelled in a criminal case to be a witness against himself. That means you don't have to testify against yourself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So, let me say this. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So if you see this, like, there's a couple major issues here. So to not be deprived of life, liberty, or property. So if I have the right to bear arms and a police officer executes me and I was not given a trial, this is a Fifth Amendment violation. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if that police officer is nervous. It doesn't matter if they have an itchy trigger finger. It doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't matter how tall they are. It doesn't matter if they're a male or a female. None of that is relevant. You're simply there to uphold the law, and part of the law is due process. So if we're going to be allowing police officers to carry guns and execute people on the side of the road, what? where did this become okay?
Also, like something maybe that, maybe people don't necessarily think about is non-judicial foreclosures. In my opinion, this is a Fifth Amendment violation
Yep.
because you're not awarded your due process of law,
Property.
and it goes against you being deprived of property.
Yeah.
And it being taken for public use because that's what banks are. They're public, and they don't give you any compensation. So, to me, non-traditional mortgage foreclosures are definitely a Fifth Amendment violation.
Absolutely. The Sixth Amendment.
In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by impartial jury of the state and district where the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to inform of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense.
All right, we're going to go to the Seventh Amendment. In suits at common law, where the value of controversy shall exceed $20, the right of a trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States according to the rules of the common law. Yes.
So that's right. We don't have to take a suit into court with codes and statutes. We don't. You can absolutely take a suit at common law, which would be considered equity.
Yep.
Lawyers are not taught equity because you can't take a dead entity to court in common law. It's man to man or equity ex persona. So, but if anybody tells you that you cannot do an equity case, the Seventh Amendment actually says differently.
Right. And I know that like $20 doesn't seem like very much in today's time. Back then, I mean, that was more than like some people's 2-year salaries. So like it was a lot. In a nutshell, it ties back into the same thing also when you're talking about being deprived of your property. It's most likely came into effect with houses or maybe like certain horses or something like that. What were the expensive things back in the 18th century? That's really what this is about. The Eighth Amendment.
Excessive bail should not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted.
This is very vaguely written, and I think that everybody has their own idea of what would be excessive, what's okay, what's not okay. And that's really when you sit back and you go, well, what crime would you say where bail should not be granted? And in my opinion, I think only murder should be where bail is just not allowed. I think every other crime there should be at least an attempt at bail. The dollar amount or what bail is, I mean, that's obviously not for me to decide, and it's determined by the facts of the case.
Yeah, I feel like the higher the bail, the higher the flight risk you are. Yep. Are you going to come back? Always a great question.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what the bond bags is. Are you going to come back?
Yep, exactly. Just because you walked into court the first time, maybe that's not actually completely done and settled with. So we need to make sure that you're going to come back and settle the affairs.
People try to escape jail all the time.
Exactly. The Ninth Amendment. The enumeration in this Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. What this really means is that there's more than just the Bill of Rights. There's more than just what the amendments state. There are many different natural laws. There are many different universal laws that we all go by. So it's not to say that just what's written in the Constitution are construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So this is where things like the right to travel comes in. This is where the things like my right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm sure we've all heard that, especially if you've gone to public school. It's a guarantee you've heard life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. So it's like, what's that? Define what's the pursuit of happiness.
What if your religion, asks you to pray 3 times a day? You're in school, and they don't want you to do that. Well, it's like, well, no, that would be now an issue.
Right, the 10th Amendment.
The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to these states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people.
So that's where it comes into, it's like, okay, so we have day-to-day operations that have to be run. No matter what, not everything is a situation for Congress to solve. Not everything is a situation for say, the president to solve. So that's where it's reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Y'all in West Virginia know how to run your business. We don't need to tell you how to do it. You guys can take care of it. And that's what it really comes down to. You need to hold your hand through everything.
People, if you allow them, we police ourselves pretty well. Either through societal bullying or, just saying, hey, that's not the right thing to do. I mean, if you want to break it down to bringing back to the people, I mean, we're really good at keeping people in mind just by looks and talks and whispers.
Anybody heard the phrase, the court of public opinion?
Yeah.
All right, the 11th Amendment, the judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity, commerce, or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens of subject of a foreign state. The 12th Amendment is very long.
All right, I'll take it. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be inhabitant of the same state with themselves. They shall name in their ballots the person voted for as president, and in district ballots the person voted for as vice president, and they shall make distinct lists of all persons voted for as president, and of persons voted for as vice president, and of the number of votes of each, which lists they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of the government of the United States, directed to the President of the Senate. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of Senate and the House of Representatives, open all certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be president if such number be a majority of the whole number of the electors appointed. And if no person have such majority, then form the persons having the highest numbers not exceeding 3 on the list of those voted for as president. The House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot. But in choosing the president, the votes shall be taken by states. The representation from each state having one vote, a quorum for this purpose, shall consist of a member or members from 2/3 of the states, and the majority of all states shall be necessary to a choice. And if the House of Representatives shall not choose a president, whenever the right of choice shall devolve upon them before the 4th day of March following, the vice president shall act as president, as in case or of death or constitutional disability of the president. The person having the greatest number of votes as vice president shall be the vice president in such manner be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and in no person have a majority, then form 2 highest numbers on the list. The Senate shall choose the vice president. A quorum for the purpose shall consist of 2/3 of the whole number of senators, and a majority of the whole number shall be necessary to a choice, but no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of the president shall be eligible to that of the vice president of the United States.
Man,
you can't be the president if you're not eligible to be the president. If you don't meet the standards of the president, you absolutely cannot be the vice president.
Yeah, because every single time the vice president has a chance of being the president. So
absolutely.
All right, moving on to the 13th Amendment. This is one of those groundbreaking things that happened in United States history. So Section 1, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the parties shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction. Section 2, Congress has the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So This is where we freed the slaves. This happened during Abraham Lincoln's presidency. It was a very, very important part of Abraham Lincoln's presidency, and this is essentially what ended slavery in the United States. The 14th Amendment is another one of those pretty long ones, and we will be breaking this down a little bit. So, want to go ahead?
In my opinion, this is one of the biggest ones for the Bill of Rights. It really talks about citizenship, and so let's get into it. Section 1, all persons, first son, born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws.
So when you look at the word persons in the first sentence there, it does not mean every person in the United States. Okay. So this goes in direct correlation with the 13th Amendment. So you have to think about it that during Abraham Lincoln presidency, so we're in about 1850, 1860 right now in real human history. We just had all these people that don't have citizenship. We just freed the slaves.
3/5.
Exactly. The 3/5 law no longer applies. You are now full people. You are officially 5 out of 5 people. And you're 100% of a person, and you need something. So when they mean persons, they're actually referring to former slaves. They're not referring to previous people who are already U.S. citizens or hold state citizenship in any state. So in a nutshell, this was for Black people who were slaves. That's really it.
Right. And they define that more in the slaughterhouse cases. If you're interested in looking into that, that really set the tone of the entire nation for forever.
I believe that was like right around 1870s.
Yeah.
And no one has challenged the slaughterhouse cases on any public forum whatsoever.
Correct.
So that ruling is still upheld to this day. Section
Absolutely. 2. Section 2. Representatives shall be appointed among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for president and vice president of the United States, representatives in Congress and in the executive and judicial officers of a state or the members of the legislature thereof is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States or any way abridged except for participation in rebellion or other crime. The basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the corporation, which the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years of age in such state.
Section 3.
No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who have previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to enemies thereof. But Congress may be a vote of 2/3 of each house remove such disability.
So this kind of ties into in our much more recent history when we all talk about January 6, 2020. Whatever you believe happened that day, and all that's very subjective. And I don't know that we're ever going to formally discuss that on this podcast. But what they're really saying, or what they were trying to do, is like during the 2024 election, was saying that, hey, if we can prove that Donald Trump incited an insurrection, then under Amendment 14, Section 3, he will never be able to hold any other public office again. This would be the same for any other person that is, found guilty of this crime. Now, he was not found guilty of the crime. And again, whether you believe he did or didn't, that's up to you and your opinion. But at the end of the day, he is our president now, which means that he was not engaging in an insurrection. Simply because he is the president of the United States and holds that office, by that definition, he did not engage in an insurrection.
In my opinion, I think he just tried to.
He didn't believe the outcome of the 2020 election. Whether you guys believe in the 2020 election, whether you think it was stolen, whether you think the mail-in ballots, it's all about your opinion and whatever opinion you guys have, and that's great. It's just, hey, we're gonna move past it. Down
Just because you try to empower your people doesn't mean that you
committed an insurrection.
Exactly.
Section 4.
The validity of public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment or pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, shall not be questioned. But neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States or any claim for the loss of emancipation of any slave. But all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void.
So that last part. So any claim for the loss or emancipation of the slave. So if I was a former slave owner and I now had to, obviously all of my slaves are now free, I cannot go to the United States Treasury and say, give me $50 per slave. I just lost out on $50 per slave.
Absolutely.
Too bad, so sad. They're free. Move on. You don't get your debt covered. Sorry, you once had slaves. Section 5.
Just because you could sell them a year ago doesn't mean you can sell them
now.
The Congress shall have power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article.
All right. The 15th Amendment, the right of the citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on accordance of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. So basically what that's saying right there is that, yeah, exactly. Black people can vote. Asian people can vote. Doesn't matter if you're servitude. Doesn't matter if you were made. None of that stuff matters. As long as you are of lawful age, you can vote. The Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. 16th Amendment.
The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived without portion. Yeah, among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration.
That's the key part of this one, because basically, like the 16th Amendment did not give Congress the ability to make new taxes, because at the time it was a big deal dealing with how many people lived in what areas, and there was a big issue as far as if you were in a more populated area, you were going to have more tax than if you were in a less populated area. And that's what this means by any census or enumeration. It's because it's no, we can't charge somebody more tax because they live in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is a bigger city than, say, San Jose. So the 17th Amendment, the Senate of the United States shall be comprised of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. The electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branches of the state legislatures. When vacancies happen in the representation of any state in the Senate, the executive authority of such state shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies, provided that the legislature in the state may empower the executive thereof to make temporary appointments until the people fill the vacancies by election as a legislative until the people. This amendment shall not be construed as to affect the election or term of any senator chosen before it becomes part of the Constitution. So yeah, basically in a nutshell, what that's saying there is that, hey, if somebody happens to die, in office, well, we're going to appoint somebody to fill that role up until we can go ahead and do this writ. Once that writ is done, that's where special elections take place. It happens, guys. It happens all the time, special elections.
Absolutely. The sheriff steps down or gets
Yeah.
in trouble or whatever, and it's in the middle of his
Term,
term, then
congressman, congresswoman. It happens all the time.
yeah, we'll just come in and appoint somebody until we can get.
Yeah, we can have the next election and then people can decide because we the
Right.
18.
So, Section 1, after 1 year from the ratification of this article, the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors within the importation thereof into or the exportation thereof from the United States and all territories subject to the jurisdiction thereof for beverage purposes is hereby prohibited.
Hey, you drunks, you can't drink in the United States. 18th Amendment says so.
Prohibition, love it. The Congress and the several states shall have concurrent power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of several states as provided in the Constitution within 7 years from the date of the submission hereof to the state by the Congress.
Mm-hmm. The 19th Amendment. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or infringed in the United States by any state on the account of sex. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.
So this is where women's right really comes.
Yeah, women's suffrage movement was very much behind the passing of the 19th Amendment. The
So
20th,
we're like, where are we? Like
we're in like 1920 right now.
1918,
1918, I think, was the passing of the 19th Amendment, something like that. So we're early 20th century right now.
Excellent, love it. 20th Amendment. The terms of president and vice president shall end at noon on the 20th day of January, and the terms of senators and representatives at noon on the 3rd day of January of the years in which such terms would have ended if this article had not been ratified, and the terms of successors shall then begin.
So that's very interesting for this to be an amendment of the Constitution. So we might have to look back at like when they call it passing of the torch, the peaceful transition of power. I wonder if prior to the 20th Amendment, there was presidents who refused to leave office. Maybe that happened. I'm not familiar with that. Section
Or maybe he wasn't very cute about leaving the office. Yeah.
Can't make me leave.
Being rude. Section 2, the Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, and such meeting shall begin at noon on the 3rd day of January, unless they shall by law appoint a different day. So sometimes Congress will say, hey, we're going to meet, and then they are all out of town until they go, hey, we're going to, confer on this day the next month. And then they're still all out of state, all out of, District of Columbia, and they'll sometimes just keep
Absolutely. It's a little disappointing that we have to put in that Congress must meet.
At least once.
That's really disappointing, actually. That means that what were you all doing? Y'all not meeting? So why were y'all getting your salaries?
Seriously. If at any time fixed for the beginning of the term of the president shall elect. President-elect shall have died. The vice president-elect shall become president. If a president shall not have been chosen for the time fixed for the beginning of this term, or if the president-elect shall have failed to qualify, then the vice president-elect shall act as president until the president shall have qualified. And the Congress may by law provide the case wherein neither a president-elect nor a vice president-elect shall have qualified, declaring who shall then act as president, or the manner in which one who is to act shall be selected, and such person shall act accordingly, until a president or vice president shall have qualified. Section 4. The Congress may by law provide for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the House of Representatives may choose a president whenever the right of choice shall have devolved upon them, and for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the Senate may choose a vice president whenever the right of choice shall have devolved upon them. Sections 1 and 2 shall take effect on the 15th day of October following the ratification of this article. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years from the date of its submission.
It's very strange for that to be in there. So there must have been some type of controversy regarding the 20th Amendment, because there would be no reason to say if it's ratified in the amendment. So yeah, this must have taken quite a bit of time, and there must have been a lot of debates over it. Otherwise, there would be no need to put that in there.
And then also to add 7 years from the date of its submission.
That's a long time.
Yeah, why 7 years?
Everything was like 3 years.
Office terms are not 7 years.
Exactly. What are you gonna do? So the 21st Amendment. Hey, everybody who likes to drink, you can drink again. The 18th article of the Amendment of the Constitution of the United States is hereby repealed. So, in a nutshell, enjoy your liquor again, everybody. The transportation or importation to any state, territory, or possession of the United States for delivery or use therein of intoxicating liquors and violation of others is hereby prohibited. The article shall be inoperative unless it has been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by convention of the several states as provided in this Constitution within 7 years from the date of submission. We'll see. We're just going to keep going. The 22nd.
Section 1, no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice, and no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president shall be elected to the office of president more than once. But this article shall not apply to any person holding the office of president when the article was proposed by Congress, and shall not prevent any person who may be holding the office of the president or acting as president during the term within which the article becomes operative from holding the office of president or acting as president during the remainder of the term. So Kamala Harris is a great example of this. So if she would have won, she would have only been able to serve one more, like her first round of election, right?
I'm not sure about that. So there's a couple of interesting history facts, and we'll come back to what Stephanie just said there. So George Washington, our first constitutional president, stated that he felt that no one should serve more than 2 terms. It was never actually a law. It was never actually an amendment. And the only president to serve more than 2 terms is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR. This obviously came in after his 3.5 terms, but he was technically elected 4 times to office. And really the only way that this could happen, so if you were the vice president for 1 term, and then you made it to 2 years and some change, so let's call it like 2 years and 3 months, the president that you're serving dies, you become president, so you could serve just under 2 years. You could then be elected to 2 more election cycles. That is the only way now, after the 22nd Amendment, to serve more than 2 terms. You must, that's it. Otherwise, you can be elected twice to the office of the president, and by definition, the office of the vice president. But if you'll notice that it specifically states, no person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice. It does not say vice president there. So it's very specific about it's referring just to the highest office.
Acting as president during the term.
Oh yeah, that's right. Or acted as president. So
and Kamala Harris, she came in at the very end of Biden's presidency and took over.
Was she actually president though? I thought she was still VP.
Yeah, but he stepped down. I don't know what was official and what was not. There was a lot of gray area at that moment. Section 2, this article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years from the date of its submission, to the states by Congress.
All right. So moving on to the 23rd Amendment, Section 1. The district constituting the seat of government of the United States shall appoint in such manner as Congress may direct. A number of electors of president and vice president equal to the whole number of senators and representatives in Congress to which the district would be entitled if it were a state, but in no event more than the least populous state. They shall be in addition to those appointed by the states, but they have to be considered for the purposes of the election of the president, vice president, to the electors appointed by the state, and they shall meet in the district and perform such duties as performed by the 12th article of this amendment.
So in my opinion, they're talking about the District of Columbia,
Yeah.
where Congress operates out
Yeah,
of.
and having representatives for the District of Columbia. Section 2, the Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. I just find that interesting that they're starting to put that in every amendment in the 20th century.
Yeah,
It's actually very strange.
absolutely.
24th Amendment.
The right of citizens of the United States to vote in any primary or other election for president or vice president, for electors for president or vice president, or for senator or representative in Congress shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state by reason of failure to pay poll tax or other tax. The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.
So in a nutshell, the right to vote is a basic human right, and there is no reason for me to pay $5 poll tax or a $1 poll tax or my left pinky poll tax in order for me to cast my ballot. That would be ridiculous. The 25th Amendment, Section 1, in case of removal of the president from office or of his death or resignation, the vice president shall become president. Section 2, whenever there is a vacancy in the office of vice president, the president shall nominate a vice president who shall take office upon confirmation by a majority vote of both houses of Congress. So that means the Congress and the Senate, by the way. That's what vote of both houses of Congress means. Section 3, whenever the president transmits to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, and he will retransmit to them a written declaration to the contrary. Such powers and duties shall be discharged by the vice president as acting president. So basically, in a nutshell, if the president cannot do their job, those powers and duties fall onto the vice president to handle those job and duties, whatever that is. Section 4, whenever the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive department or as such other bodies of Congress may by law provide, transmit to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives the written declaration the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the vice president shall immediately assume those powers to be acting president. Thereafter, when the president transmits to the president pro tempore, the Senate, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that no inability exists, he shall resume his powers and duties of his office unless the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive department or such other bodies of Congress may be law provided. Transmit within 4 days to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives that the declaration of the president is able to discharge his powers and duties of the office. Thereupon, Congress shall decide the issue, assembling within 48 hours of the purpose, if not a session. If Congress within 21 days after receipt of a letter of the written declaration, or if Congress is not in session within 21 days after Congress is required to assemble, determined by 2/3 vote of both houses that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the vice president shall become in discharge an acting president. Otherwise, the president shall assume powers and duties of his office. So, guys, in a nutshell, what this is really saying is it's setting rules and standards where if the president cannot do his job, then the vice president takes over. If the president can then do his or her job again, they have X amount of days to write back saying, hey, I have the ability to do my job. So it's just like stepping away from a position for a little while. And thus, within that time frame, if they can, the president gets to resume his or her role. If not, then I would have to assume that the VP would stay on in that role. The 26th Amendment.
The right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years or older to vote shall be denied or abridged by the shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of age.
Yeah.
The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriation legislation.
Remember earlier in the amendments, it said 21 years of age. So I guess at some point, U.S. history, you had to be 21 to vote, and the 26th Amendment is what made 18 and older. Cool beans. The 27th Amendment. No law varying the compensation of the services of senators or representatives shall take effect until an election of representatives shall have intervened. All right.
So you can't just start being in office unless, they've intervened and actually, gotten you into office and you've taken your oath and all of that. So 27th, that's the last one.
That's the last one. And
we really appreciate you guys tuning in. And if you have any questions or answers, please put them below. And hopefully we can, get those into the next episode.
Yeah, absolutely. We welcome all your questions. We welcome all your comments. If something didn't make sense, if there's stuff you want us to go into in more depth, we're happy to do the research for you and then talk about it on future episodes. The truth isn't hidden. It's just ignored. So that's why we wanted to take the time and actually sit down and read the entire Constitution. Because I think that we do talk about the Constitution quite a bit as a general public, but this is the whole thing. Didn't vary anything, maybe didn't pronounce everything correctly, but I blame being from the Midwest. So, very happy to be here with you guys. And
but it really shows us how far we've drifted from what was written, and it also gives us the tools to reclaim what was lost.
Absolutely.
But here, the part no one told us in civics, the document doesn't grant us rights. It acknowledges the rights we were born with. It limits the government, not us, not the people. If you've ever felt like your freedoms were taken, boxed, or barcoded, maybe you were never supposed to operate in that system to begin with. I mean, it all really comes down to jurisdiction and correcting your jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this podcast is about: faith, freedom, law, trust, sovereignty, not from a political lens, but from a lawful, spiritual, and practical one.
Absolutely, guys.
If this episode stirred something in you, stay with me and Mark. This season, we're diving into things we were never taught on purpose. Next episode, we'll talk about the citizenship really means and why correcting your status may not be radical. It might be essential. Until then, read something for yourself, share this episode, and remember, the truth isn't hidden, it's just ignored. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Mark Lomasney.
And this is Things We Don't Talk About.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day.